Okay, how we doing, guys? With regards to the gameplay in the background, it is some regular Demolition, and it is a 42 for 9. Now I know that's not the most excitingly high scoring game, but sometimes I think it's not always about the scoring. You see, Demolition's quite a hard game to get high scores on because you've got that intensity of, if you're an objective player, you're going to get constantly C4'd as you're trying to plant. So yeah, this was an intense game and hopefully you'll enjoy it. But I do not want to talk about the gameplay. What I want to talk to you about is something called trolling. You may have heard of it. And what I wanted to do was hopefully give you some instruction and maybe a bit of an idea in the best way to deal with somebody who's trolling you, or if a group of people are trolling you. I know when I was younger, when I was at school up until you're about 18, 19, you kind of get these idiots who try to bully you, or it's not like it is now with Facebook and Twitter and all the internet access and emails. It was different when I was at school, but still just as damaging all the same. And I know the way I would have reacted back then would have been in an aggressive and negative kind of way, and just opened up a whole window and can of worms for people to carry on throwing what they wanted to at me. And you used to get people like your parents telling you to ignore it. I know what it's like when you're young. You think your parents are dicks. You really do, even though they're not. You know, they've been young as well, but you do just look at your mum and dad and you're like, what do you know? You've always been this age. You've never been young. You don't understand. However, the thing is, you do. As you get a bit older, you kind of get where you went wrong, and you almost want to impose your knowledge on younger people and hopefully help them out. So that's what this is. Now, to me, there are two kinds of trolling in particular that I can think of. Number one is in-game trolling. Now, what I mean by that is, as you know, you've seen the videos, somebody camping in a corner, two guys walk over, stand in front of him, and trap him. Genius. I love that kind of stuff. I'm sorry, it's not for everybody, but for me, I love a bit of trolling. I really do. I'm subscribed to a lot of trolling channels because to me, it's harmless fun. Yes, you are picking on somebody. Yes, you are victimizing somebody. But the great thing about this is that if you are the victim, you've got no immediate threat directed at you within your own personal space. All you need to do is pick up your controller, press a few buttons, and you're out of that situation. Simple. Or you can do exactly what the trollers want you to do and start screaming and yelling blue murder and illustrating a whole caricature of situations that you would like to, I don't know, impose upon them. Now I would say to you that is probably not the road to go down, but then that would mean we've got no videos. So no, I'm not going to say anything about that one. But what I did want to talk to you about is the other kind of trolling, which is the trolling over Twitter, Facebook, YouTube even. And this is a little bit more personal. This kind of sticks because it's general text that's written down. And 9 times out of 10 that text stays. Once something's written, it is there. Once something is said, it is out there, it's gone, it's disappeared. When it's written down, it generally tends to stay. And that is the most harsh thing about what happens when people are getting trolled online or on Facebook. Now, from my own personal experience, I haven't had too much of it. But when it does happen to me, realistically, I find it so funny that somebody's tried to hurt my feelings with everything they can think to throw at me. It just does not bother me. Now, the example I'm going to give you is one that happened to me a couple of days ago, and it was over Twitter, and this was the way that I dealt with it. I received a message from Keemstar, DJ Keemstar, you might have heard of him. He asked me to do this kind of narration over one of his games that he'd just designed called Amputee. Now, I don't know if you've seen this game, but apparently it's big on the internet, it's big on the PC, it's an amputated arm that you control and try and make a cup of tea with it. So yeah, Keemstar sort of like, we went on to Skype and we had a chat and he sent me over a script. I recorded the script, sent it back to him, and he put it on his video. End of story. You of course wouldn't know anything about this because there's no accreditation to myself, and I never even got a thanks for it, but hey, that's Keemstar for you. Now, what preceded that 5 hours later was to sort of shock and tickle me at the same time, because as we know, Keemstar is a troller. That's what he's done, that's why his channels always get shut down, because he does the worst kind of trolling you can imagine. And he literally does not give a monkey's about who he bothers. But it's kind of allowed him to have a following of equally like-minded people. People who want to rub him up the wrong way, people who want to dislike his videos for any apparent reason, people who want to spam his channels with hate and vile remarks. And in some respects, I guess that's fine. You know, if you play with fire, you're going to get burnt. Something prompted one of these guys to come over to my Twitter account, and he sent me a message which went something like this. Listen to me, you gypsy scumbag. Keemstar may believe that you've got the golden voice, but I know that you're a scummy cider-drinking chav who sits watching Jeremy Kyle all day, with a few extra swear words thrown in for good measure. All I can say is, hilarity ensued. It was the funniest thing I've ever had written to me that wasn't on a birthday card. Me 15 years ago would have responded with something of a similar nature, directed back at him, but with a little bit more intelligence and probably a bit better thought out. However, this would have been the wrong thing to do, because he would have got exactly what he wanted, and the war would have carried on. So what I did was this. Bearing in mind that he said he knew everything about me and he knew my lifestyle down to a T, I replied simply with, "Dad, is that you?" ? Simple, but effective. It means that I've responded to what he said, I'm not getting aggressive about it, I'm in fact being passive, and I can see a funny side to something that was supposed to apparently hurt my feelings. Now I kinda left it at that, but now he was a determined one, this one. And he replied back again, with a message that I think was even more hilarious than the last. "Clearly you've got father issues. I wish to God you'd never been born, I hate you. And maybe you wouldn't have been born if your mother would have swallowed when I blew my beans in her mouth." The mark of a genius. The ramblings of a man who just sits in his mother's basement thinking up the worst kind of trash to throw at people. Things like that don't bother me, I just find it funny. So, as I looked at the message I thought, well, this is clearly been written by somebody who's not a young person, but the intelligence there is not very bright, it's just they're being what I call accidentally funny. They're not meaning to be funny, he's meaning to be cruel and rude, but he is absolutely failing like a boss. So I replied with another message, yet again, not rising to the occasion, just something to make him think that he'd met the Iron Man. And I can't fully remember the extent of these messages because they eventually got deleted, but it was somewhere along the lines of this. "Wow, that is some of the funniest text that I've ever seen in my entire life. You have in fact brightened up a day that was heading directly towards Gloomsville. I wish you all the best of luck in your endeavours. Godspeed, my young man." And I ended it. Now I know you might think that that's a little bit wet, but let me tell you something now. That will have had more effect on that man, because he never got what he wanted. He never got the rise he expected. I always think back to Seven. Remember that film Seven with Kevin Spacey and Brad Pitt? Final scene, Kevin Spacey's just announced that he murdered Brad Pitt's wife. In order to piece together the end part of the puzzle that he put together so strategically, he goads Brad Pitt and teases him and torments him, until eventually Brad Pitt's temper can't take it anymore. He snaps, he pulls out his gun and he shoots him in the head. And just before he does this, you see this smile on Kevin Spacey's face. It was the final piece to his puzzle. So yeah, just a little tidbit for you guys. Lecture over, apocalypse done.